All right, here we are with Mick Willette, longtime tennis coach, current teacher as well at Hastings High School. Mick, we'll get into all your background, all your coaching stats, and everything like that. We do like to start with a couple questions to get a little background information on you first, though, so people get to know who you are and kind of what makes you tick. So we'll start out with our first one here. What is your hometown? What high school did you graduate from, and when did you graduate high school?
Yeah, I graduated 1993. My hometown is actually a really tiny, small farming community in southern Minnesota. It's called Delavan, population about 300. But we had a K through 12 school for a long time. But about the time I went into seventh grade, Delavan merged with Blue Earth. So I headed over to the big city in Blue Earth area, and the Blue Earth Bucks. That's where I graduated.
Nice. Tell us about your family growing up too. So brothers, sisters, mom and dad, where your parents worked. Did you guys move around a little bit? Did you always grow up in the same house? And then maybe talk about the transition to Blue Earth area. Was that kind of pretty seamless growing from the small town to maybe a little bit bigger town, or kind of what that was like too?
Yeah, that was kind of my first. I mean, that was, yeah, very challenging thing. I'd lived in this small town of about 300 people for, my first, 12 years or whatever. So that was life changing to go where, and my parents moved me a year before the rest of the town came. They just kind of wanted to get a jump start on it. They knew it was going to happen. They said, might as well start it a little bit early. And part of that was they found this amazing house out in the woods just outside of Blue Earth that we moved to. So I was a townie in the small town, but then it was a pretty idyllic way to grow up. Just one brother, 2 years older than me, and we got along great. But we had very different interests growing up. He was kind of a computer nerd and into theater, and I was, the sports kid. We both played music, um, and we connected. We worked together at my dad's farm. My dad farmed with three of his brothers, so that was our summer job, and I have two cousins that are close in age. So that really, the four of us were a tight knit group, and we bonded together doing manual labor out on the farm. Picking weeds and getting rocks out of the field and whatever else my dad and our uncles wanted us to do. But um, yeah, it was a pretty nice life. My mom was an art teacher. She in seventh grade, she was my art teacher, which was always gives you perspective. I always kind of think about how I teach or coach my kids. Never been perfect at it or really good at it, I don't think, but I've done a lot of reflecting on that lately, and I think now it's getting a lot more comfortable. I'm having a lot of fun this year coaching my son with tennis. He's playing a little tennis this year, and my youngest Joey, he's playing baseball this year. And my daughter Maddie, she's doing a little bit of tennis as well. So I'm gonna I think have a lot of opportunities this summer to coach them. They're all kind of ready and willing to be coached. So the timing is pretty good for me not coaching now.
Nice. So this is kind of a sports podcast, and we center around a lot of sports and interview people that are sports is kind of a main thing in their life. So think about your first or your best earliest sports memory. This could be playing catch with with your dad in the backyard. It could be a tennis thing, a basketball thing. So, what do you think your best or your earliest sports memory is?
I just remember. I mean, I was baseball obsessed growing up. And so one of my earliest memories is just we had at the house in Delavan. We had a pretty sweet side lot. I think we had like a double lot growing up. So, but there was no, and so the neighborhood kids of all ages got together. We played baseball. That was just the summer ritual. We just whoever's around. That's just kind of what we did all day long. And then there was like a farm field behind our house. So and we had a fence like built there. So there was like a legit home run fence. That's once you got old enough, you could that was always the thing. Like someday I want to be able to hit home runs over that fence. And I think by the time I got to like fourth or fifth grade, I could finally hit balls over that fence. So that's probably my earliest sports and just longest lasting, most impressionable one. And what that led to was just an obsession with baseball, everything baseball. Um, and when I was in seventh grade, it was 1987. That's when the Twins, made the World Series, and so I had an aunt who was baseball obsessed too, and at the beginning of that year, she promised me if the Twins make it the World Series, she's going to find a way to take me. And because they had just signed Jeff Reardon and a few other pitchers, and it was like they might be good this year. And so she made that promise, and true to her word, she got me ticket for Game 7. So that's a sports memory that forever etched in my mind for sure.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. Moving on then, you maybe already talked about this too, working on the farm and stuff, rock picking and maybe detasseling corn and all that kind of stuff too. You're always working in the field. So what do you think your earliest job was? This could be a paid job maybe after you're working on the farm, or maybe the farm was your whole life growing up too. So what do you think your first job was?
Yeah, that was it. I mean, even when we were in like fourth grade or whatever, they started bringing us out there and unpaid. Probably some child labor laws being
Mhm.
violated, but even once we started getting paid, I think my cousins that we joke about all the time was probably like $3 an hour that we were getting paid for the longest time. But it was a great summer job. It was I didn't appreciate it at the time, of course, but I appreciated working with my brother and my cousins, and just some of the characters out there, my uncles, just being able to spend time with people I care a great deal about. And the more you're suffering doing a job, the more you bond with the people around you. Um, and so my cousins and my brother, we of course we've got incredible memories um, about about the work that we did out there, and um, constantly are making references, when we get together still about just yeah being in the field all day. Or um, at some point we stopped walking beans, where you're picking the weeds out of the field by hand, and we got to upgrade to spraying weeds. So we get to sit on the front of a tractor and have these like wands, we call them, to spray the weeds. We just think about, all the cancerous chemicals that went into our bodies as we're just sitting out there half naked and the wind blowing chemical all over us.
That was
This
a
that kind of stuff.
that was an upgrade though. That kind of
Yeah, it
job.
was an upgrade.
Mm.
Absolutely, get to ride. That was luxurious. Not to have to walk. I sometimes wonder how many miles we walked, but you think about the values you learn. Doing a hard day's work, manual labor.
Mhm.
Um, it makes sitting in class or whatever other jobs I think look glamorous, and really made me motivated to go to college. I like I said, I had no desire to make that my career. So I think it really motivated me to get good grades, go to college, get something that wasn't manual labor for sure.
For sure. I think you're about my third or fourth person that's had to well, I don't know if you had to, but detasseling corn. So that's been a popular job growing up. So you're about the third or fourth person that's
Yeah,
had to do that.
yeah,
So
that is
seems that seems like
that is
torture,
a
but
rough
that's okay.
job.
Yeah. All right. Last one here then. Getting to know you here, Mick. You could pick any of these you want, but maybe pick about three of them. And if you want to pick a couple of them, that's okay too. So
All right.
your favorite movie, your favorite food, your favorite artist, and this is going to be a big one for you, favorite author, and then your favorite time of the year.
Favorite movie still is The Big Lebowski.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my students know that I did a Lebowski week a couple years ago where I was teaching them dudism. I was all about trying to get them to take on a new perspective, but
You came
it's
out as
just
the dude for the thumb wrestling contest one year too, so that was
that's right, yeah, for the paper rocks. And by the way, I'm still the reigning champion for that.
that was,
No one has taken me down yet on the
that
paper rock
that
scissors.
was rock paper, not thumb wrestling. You're right. Yep, that was awesome.
So, um, yeah, I don't know. There's just something about that movie. I think again, it's that time of life. I was what 20, I don't know, 25 or whatever when that came out. 23. Just those formative years where you're bonding with your friends, and um, just one of those quotable movies, that it's Coen Brothers. They just do weird stuff, and the more you watch it, the more you appreciate it. Um, Same, just kind of a long lasting. So musical artist for me, that was a tough one. I know Trent. I mean, it's Pearl Jam, and there's no doubt about it. But I'm pretty eclectic. I like a lot of different music. Um, my mom was a classically trained piano violinist, so we listened to a lot of classical music. She was into uh, plays growing up, so it inundated with show tunes, and I kind of was exposed to a lot of different types of music. Growing up in Blue Earth, it was country music, classic rock. Then when I got to college, a lot of alternative music I was turned on to. But an artist who's been with me my entire life is Paul Simon. I just remember my brother being into Paul Simon, my uncles, and hearing about I had some relatives who were at the Central Park concert in New York who talked about what a life changing experience that was, and yeah, and I just started listening to it on my own and just fell in love with Simon and Garfunkel and then Paul Simon when his solo career, and loved him on Saturday Night Live too. I was, a big part of my life growing up watching Saturday Night Live. He was on there a lot, and um, so that's probably the one I kind of go back to that I've listened to, in pretty much my entire life. It's the one artist who's spanned, my 40 years, 45 years. Yeah, definitely glad there's an opportunity to promote literacy here. So, favorite author. Um, I kind of, some of the books I teach and get to teach again and again, yeah, are definitely a part of that. But from just my sheer enjoyment, it's either Barbara Kingsolver, who I think she's got an incredible perspective. She has a great perspective about humanity and the natural world, and through her stories, I think really brings home the importance of that. And that's growing up in a rural area and farming, I've had I think a sense about that connection about where our food comes from, and not to take for granted the natural world. And her stories, I think, just beautifully and poetically share that, just this spiritual connection that we have, and not to take for granted you know our natural resources. So I mentioned her. And just probably the author that I've read most prolifically, his name's Kazuo Ishiguro, he's a British author but Japanese descent, but he just brings a really unique perspective of the East and the West. Um, and I don't know, just something about his writing, his stories. I just get immersed into his characters. Probably the one author without fail that I'll read and just completely get lost in the story, like no other. So, all
Nice.
right, there you go.
I think I got one of her. Yeah, I got the Poisonwood Bible. I got that book
Oh,
right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So yeah, that's
not great to hear, Tim. That's
yeah,
probably
it's
my
right there.
favorite one of hers. So
Yeah, that's
well
nice.
done.
So we got the picture of you growing up here. So you're on the front of the tractor, spraying the weeds, listening to Call Me Al. So we got it going. So we got it going on here. All right, growing up in Blue Earth, Minnesota. Nice.
Yeah,
So moving on here, we could skip forward a little bit. I think maybe briefly talk about college, and then we can get into how you got to Hastings, if there was any stops before Hastings, how you got into teaching as well, and then we could slowly maybe get into your coaching career as well. So
sure.
let's maybe skip forward a little bit to college. Yeah, your road to Hastings, and then obviously you're still teaching English right now, and then how many years you coached, what sports you coached, for how long, and that's where we'll stop right there.
Sounds good. Yeah, I went to St. John's for 4 years and had an opportunity to play tennis there. D3 tennis experiences is pretty nice. It's you're not shackled to the sport the way I think you would be if you're on scholarship or something like that. So it was really just a nice extension of high school sports experience. And I went to college kind of with the idea of being a journalist. Was I had a love of writing, and of course sports, and I thought being a sports journalist would be a pretty cool life. Um, but then I started doing tennis camps during the summer. I had an opportunity to do tennis and life camps at Gustavus Adolphus. My high school coach that I had senior year, that was his summer gig, and I never went there as a kid, but I kind of knew about it, and what he said about it, talked about it. I mean, it was just a love affair that he had with these camps, and so kind of applied and got an opportunity. Kind of one of the outsiders, it was mostly Gusties, but incredible experience. I did that for 3 years, and that's really where I made the switch to. I just love working with kids, and kind of my perspective on journalism soured as I started really getting an understanding of what kind of a dreary life it is, even if you're going to all these sporting events. I started shadowing some journalists and just realized, man, this long hours, late nights, the lifestyle of teaching just really appealed to me, and being able to coach and, you know, still tap into my love of literature and writing. And it's been a wonderful match. So different time. I was offered my first job without even interviewing or applying, because Blue Earth was looking for a tennis coach and an English teacher. And my mom was still teaching there at the time. So she just put a little bug in the ear of the principal, said, my son's been looking for a job. So the principal called me and essentially offered me a job, which I'm sure pisses a lot of people off to hear that. But particularly how difficult it is to, sometimes find teaching jobs, particularly in certain fields. I was pretty blessed. It was a very different time. Now I also realized I couldn't go back home. I did 1 year in Blue Earth. My wife was doing grad school at Mankato, but she got accepted to the U of M for speech therapy. And yeah, then my wife Kelly and I knew that living in small town Blue Earth wasn't in our long term plans. Um, so then I applied to a bunch of jobs around the cities, and had some interviews. But I don't know, some of your listeners, or I don't, Tim, if you remember, if you were around when Rosie Tarnowski was um,
Sounds
teaching, or
familiar. Yep.
she did the facts before Amanda Milholland, but
Okay.
she's the aunt who took me to the World Series in
Oh,
1987.
gotcha. Okay.
So huge connection there, and she told me they were looking for an English teacher in Hastings, and she, I think, helped me get an interview. Rich Clymer was the principal at the time, and she and Rich were very tight. But Rich made it very clear that Rosie helped me get the interview, but I'm going to have to get the job on my own. But I had a great interview, and um, I think having tennis experience, always is a feather in applications caps, being able to coach and being willing to say you'll do whatever, at that time. And that's what got me to Hastings. And yeah, I've coached every year in some way, shape, or form since I started in 2000. So I did middle school for about 3 years. I did the JV job for the boys for a couple years, coached the girls varsity for about 5, and I think I've done the boys varsity for about the last 13. So it's very surreal spring right now, in many ways, of course, but really just not coaching. Um, it's yeah, but it's been a very enjoyable experience just to be able to step back and take a little bit more time with my own kids. So
For sure. So obviously, you got into coaching and you got into teaching, and you got kind of that passion at those tennis camps growing up. So why do you think you got into coaching, or what do you think was one of the main driving factors? Why'd you fall in love with teaching and coaching, and maybe the character skills that are most important to you that you really tried to instill, maybe in your students and definitely your athletes, over that 20 something plus career coaching?
for sure, yeah, that was something I was really. You think a lot about it. How did I get to where I am? And it really, I think, goes back to who made the big impression on me. Sports was a huge part of my life growing up, so I think a lot of it was my coaches who I really, latched onto for their guidance. My high school basketball coach was an incredible mentor for me, pushed me hard, got more out of me than I ever imagined. Um, Challenged me, which wasn't used to a lot. Broke me down sometimes,
Mhm.
but built me back up. He was that kind of coach, but did it really well, and just had a great respect and appreciation for him. His name was Gary Homeseth. Um, and my tennis coaches, I had my uncle. So the cousins that I hung out with, their uncle, he was a huge tennis guy, um, but he lived up in the cities. But his 4 sons came down and played. His name was Chuck Anderson, and he coached at Stillwater for many years. And Edina, he took a lot of those teams, girls and boys, to the state tournament. Like he's a coaching legend. Um, and I had didn't probably appreciate it at the time, but just had free lessons from him for, many years of my life because his four sons came and lived with my cousins in Blue Earth. Um, he was kind of a stubborn old goat. He had like a Santa Claus beard and just a gruff character. And his boys were set to go to Cooper. Two of them were playing at the high school already, and two of them were, one was like a seventh grader, one was an eighth grader. They had a rule that you had to be in ninth grade to play varsity at Cooper. Well, he didn't like that. His
Mhm.
boys are good enough. All four of them should have been on the varsity, and he said fine. And he said they're going to go live with my sister down in Blue Earth. He knew they had good tennis in Blue Earth, and helped make Blue Earth this tennis dynasty for about a decade because his four boys were down there. It's just one of the weirder things you could ever imagine. Just sending your four kids off just on principle because you're upset about a rule. But boy, I sure benefited from that, being able to get coaching from him and be around his boys. I had just a lot of great mentors for tennis and just sort of got exposed to it through osmosis. But senior year, probably one of the more uh, influential people in my life was this guy. His name is David Austin, who worked at the tennis and life camps. And um, I didn't. I There was a legendary coach forever in Blue Earth. His name was Hal Schrader, who retired before I started playing varsity. So I just had fill-in coaches, great guys, math teacher and a couple other people who just filled in, but they didn't know tennis. But senior year, this young guy, 23-year-old guy, David Austin, moves into Blue Earth and just as energetic and positive. I mean, everything we talk about now about, transformative coaching, he was that. I mean, every time I, I think about, he checked off every box of what it means to be a transformative coach. He was the kind of teacher who, during his lunch, he would go find the kid sitting by himself in the cafeteria and have his lunch with that kid. I mean, everybody who had him in class, they just felt like they were the only ones being taught by him. And same on the tennis coach. Um, and so really just followed in his footsteps a little bit and working at Gustavus Adolphus. And he made me his kind of point man for the Blue Earth Summer program after I graduated that summer. Essentially ran the entire Blue Earth Summer program as an 18-year-old with his, belief in me and trust in me. Um, and then one of the most horrible days of my life was the day he died in a car accident. 1995, Thanksgiving night. He and his brother were driving to Chicago and hit black ice and spun out and were just devastated by a semi coming the other way. And just shook the town, just destroyed the town. He was that kind of guy. Um, but yeah, that's definitely a moment in my life where I was like, why does stuff like that happen? Right? It's just like makes no sense, and took me a while to try to process it. But I think he lives on through everybody who's been influenced by him. I think he probably got a lot of people to go into teaching or coaching who maybe wouldn't have otherwise. And so in some way he's living on larger than ever. And I give him credit for a lot of what I try to do or hope to do, can never do it nearly as well as he could. Um, but one of my favorite things is seeing former players of mine get into teaching, get into coaching. And, you know, after I retired, um, it's from coaching. This has just been like a cool experience to see Alex Zuzig uh, taking over the boys team
Mm-hmm.
and just know that I hope that I had some influence on him as a young man, and I'm excited to see him, kind of build the program in his own vision, but hopefully, you know, keep some of the values and ideas that I felt were important that I know I got from Dave Austin, and that maybe in some small way that's still living on. So, um, yeah, they're I've been pretty blessed with incredible role models growing up, and I think it would have been hard pressed for me to find a better profession for me, taking all the um, wisdom and knowledge that I've absorbed from so many great people. It's really been a good fit.
You talked about him being that kind of transformative coach. Do you remember? And it's hard to maybe pick one thing, but do you remember like something very specific that he did, maybe a practice, competition? And you talked about him being a teacher too, and his role as a teacher impacting kids' lives, or maybe a certain lesson that he taught you, or just something he did every single day. Do you remember maybe just one? And it could be a couple different things too. You don't have to pick just one, but
Sure.
maybe something specific that you still remember and you still hold on to, and maybe you used in your teaching or coaching as well.
I just remember that um, just I don't know how to express it, but just that sheer confidence and belief he had in everyone. Just he just burst with confidence around him. He just made you believe that you were good enough and you and you could do more than you could ever imagine. I mean, and you just this positive support. Never saw him in a bad mood. Never saw him take a day off. Never saw his enthusiasm drop. Um, and one thing I just remembered too was cool is he brought down some of the other instructors from Gustavus Adolphus and just made he just and you would hear them talk about it later because I would then eventually I worked with some of these guys as kind of peers, but first I knew them as just these legends that he would build them up in our minds. God, he just had so much fun with everything. He just made the little things like he's like, all right, these guys from Gustavus are going to come down and he would tell us all about them and stories about them and just build them up as these legends. And he would do the same with them. He would just kind of talk about Blue Earth and Blue Earth tennis being like God's country. You guys are going to come down to God's country, and uh, I don't know if you're worthy enough. I mean, it's a pretty special place. That's just the kind of stuff he would just exaggerate, and just he was such a storyteller and character. You just couldn't help to just love being around him. Um, and that's probably what sticks in my mind. And I just kind of remember um, how that came into being for real for me on the court. I'll never forget senior year. We were playing the section doubles, and my partner and I we got the number one seed and thought we were pretty hot stuff. Um, we had a really tough draw. Actually, it was they just seeded like the top four teams at that time, and after that it was just a random draw. So we were the one seed, but we probably ended up playing the number five team in the section in the first round. And my partner and I hadn't really played much together during the season, and so we just probably needed a match or two just to kind of get familiar with each other. And so we lost the first set 3-6 or something like that, and then we were down. I remember 1-4 in the second set, and again, you're high school. My senior year, I got visions. I'm going to go to the state tournament. This is it, and we're going to lose first round, and I was just about going to lose it. And at that time, he had gone and watched some other matches, and had come back, and we were down 1-4, and just him sitting on the side of the court somehow I think made all the difference, and we won the next 11 games. we we were down 1-4. We closed out that set 6-4, and then we won the last set 6-0. Um, and I'll never forget that moment when he came and just sat down, and just the look in his eye, just no no worry, no doubt. He just was like, I'm sure he was thinking the same thing, but somehow he was such an incredible actor. He just kind of exuded this belief and confidence, like, you got this. And that'd be one thing I'd love to ask him when never got a chance to. Like, were you just about shitting your pants at that point, seeing us down 1-4, 2 games from losing first round? Um, but because of that, then we went on, won the section, and made it all the way to the semifinals of the state tournament, and went on a really nice run. And would have missed out on that. I just think about how devastating that might have been, how I might have maybe soured from tennis. You never know how you might react to something like that. Um, but I think because of that, you know, just left high school with an incredible tennis experience, and it's really just shaped so much of my life. It's interesting the paths that we go down.
Nice. So think about your career then coaching too. So obviously about a 20-year, almost over 20-year career. Do you think there was obviously there was something, but what do you think maybe one thing or maybe a couple things from the end of your career that you improved on or maybe switch your philosophy on or something you just completely changed from when you first started? I know a lot of us are go getters right away, and we're going to change the world right away, but and maybe our coaching evolves and matures as we go along too, so what do you think something is that kind of evolved as you kept on coaching over that long career?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, one of one of the things that most of my players would tell you that was sort of a thing for me in much of my coaching career was that I'd have an explosion at least once a season. Like I thought that was important, to like something just really got me upset and I would just, you know, and not full on Bobby night, but I would just kind of have a tantrum about something. It was a tantrum, is really what it was. And I think my players kind of, yeah, it helped them respond probably in some way. Oh, coach is pretty upset, um, and I thought that was kind of an important part of coaching. That you show your team that you've got that mean streak in you. Um, Last couple of years, it really wasn't until the last couple of years where it just kind of maybe I was just tired. I don't know, but um, and maybe it's part of like parenting, growing up as a parent too, and just realizing like that doesn't have to be a part of. That's really I don't think natural to me, and I don't what it doesn't have to be a part, and I don't know if it's really that effective, and maybe it does probably more harm than good. And I kind of got rid of that um, part of it. I thought it was uh, on some sort of necessity out of coaching, but I think it just sort of distracted from the other things that I think make for good coaching. And I think about Dave Austin. I don't ever remember Dave Austin having a tantrum, and probably as effective as a coach as there ever were, in my opinion. So that was definitely one thing. Um, Another part or aspect of my coaching that I think I really changed was just getting really better at leaning on my assistant coaches. And I think having Marissa Welch as my assistant coach for quite a few years and working with her in the summer and just realizing that I don't have to be the solution, the final say or whatever. Just and getting to coach with Kirk Johnson for so many years too. I think we had 3 or 4 really good years together. That Yeah, he's had such a different, unique skill set, and I want to tap into that as much as possible of how he connects and relates with kids, and let him be in charge of certain things a little bit more. And with I think he really helped me to start to see that. And then when Marissa came onto the scene, it was just like, oh my, this is just an incredible coach and talent and wealth um, of knowledge here. I am doing the team a disservice if I don't get out of the way a little bit more and let her shine and take more leadership. Um, and it just felt great to work more as a team. I think for forever, I think as a classroom teacher, you find that it's just you. So much it is really just you so much of the time, and much of my teaching career, I've taught classes where I'm the only one teaching them. I don't have that team, and so I always thought I was just a natural team player, but when it came to coaching, I really had to learn how to be more of a team player as a coach. And well, yeah, Kurt and Mercer just incredible to work with, and I would, part of I wish I could keep coaching because then Sammy Hint, she's still helping out with the team this year, and just we had the three of us going there for a little while, and it was a great experience to be able to really feel like I'm starting to understand this team thing as a coach, and probably still a lot of growth left to do with that, but I feel like at some point I'll come back to it in maybe that assistant role and can appreciate it from that end a little bit more too.
Nice. Next question, maybe a little bit similar to that, and you might have already talked about it, but if you want to elaborate it or maybe add something, that'd be great. So, say you jumped in a time machine right now and you go back to your first year coaching tennis. what's some things that you would do different? Um, maybe change about the way you coached, and you might, like I said, you might have already talked about this, but maybe something that you know now that you wish you knew back then, or like I said, something that you would change from that first year coaching.
Boy, that first year coaching or teaching for me, I think I was just a tightly wound mess of fear, just constantly worrying about you know being the authority figure and having to be the one in charge. Just really not used to that in any with a whole team. Had a lot of great coaching experience with summer camps, but there you've got a lot of like support to make sure that things go well. But yeah, coaching that first year, it was me and about 40 middle schoolers down at roadside court and at the um, and that was I wish I could kind of go back and tell that coach that just do the best you can, have fun with it. Um, so that's going to be your secret to success. Don't just kind of what you're focusing on when that first year teaching and coaching. Um, you kind of lose sight of the big picture. You're just so afraid of what you don't want to have happen, right? Rather than having this vision of what you want to see happen. And I think that's just kind of true for anything. And I think it's as I've gotten older, it just makes more sense. Put your energy into what you want to have happen, and yeah, sort of like if you golf, right, Tim?
Not very well.
No, I don't either. But
What I do, I wouldn't consider it golfing, but um, but I
sort of like,
have.
all right, so very like the rest of us. But I think most of that at times when I hit a bad shot, you're right. You're thinking about I don't want to hit it in the water. I don't want to hit it into the woods, and then you end up doing that
That's right
because
where
that's
it
what you're
goes. Yeah.
thinking about.
Hmm.
But as I've gotten a little better out on the golf course of get that visual of what you want to have happen, and that's just I think a really good metaphor for everything: coaching, teaching, life. Put your energy in what you want to have happen rather than fear of what you don't want to have happen, and that's what I'd like to tell my 23-year-old self.
I hear you. That's one thing we talk about too. This the fear versus the hope, and just a statement: what if versus even if. I think that that fear is that what if. What if these 40 kids do this, or what if this, or what if this happens. And that's that kind of fear. And that the hope then, like you're talking about, maybe as a more mature coach, is that even if even if I don't have the answers, I'll be able to figure it out and find out the answers, and we'll just have fun no matter what here at roadside playing tennis with a bunch of middle school kids. So
Yeah. Yeah, but if there ever is something to be frightened about, that probably was it.
that's
So
it
that
right there.
probably,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if they ever started running out into traffic but there are definitely times where they were trying to hit cars, with on the end court. You're on one end and they're down at the other end. So there probably were some legit things to be afraid of, but uh, yeah, for
Nice.
sure.
A couple more questions then, asking about getting more background on yourself coaching then. So looking back at your career, what do you think the best or the most rewarding thing about coaching in general has been for you?
Yeah, I think I kind of just really again seeing kids who graduate played for me, wanting to still for sure keep playing. Just to hear about kids who actually went and played at college a little bit, even like on a club team, or it's just great to hear other past players or who are doing a league, right? They're maybe almost late 20s or 30s now, but they're still playing in a league, or like with Alex Zuzik into coaching and teaching himself. Craig Raway is someone who was on that first year I started coaching middle school tennis. He was a seventh grader that year, and then he was on my JV team, and then he was on my varsity team, and then he and I coached together. So just a special relationship with Craig Raway, just to kind of see players that I coach still in the coaching ranks, the relationships you have with your players. Um, yeah, revitalized the St. Cloud trip. I think a lot in it. Sad that's something that hasn't happened the last couple of years because of COVID and other things. Um, just getting to hang out with your players in that sort of form, setting where they just love you're part of something that they just love being a part of. They just they've got their calendar set for this date. and it's something that you're a part of that you made happen for them. Just seeing kids just being excited about um, those moments and having those memories forever, helping kids, reach their potential on the court, and just, hopefully those connections about what we're doing on the court is an extension to what you do off the court. And yeah, just seeing those kids kind of living out those lessons um, in a better way than I ever would have imagined. So it's nice to kind of think you had a small part in some of these kids being good citizens, good people.
Yeah, I think you just answered my last question here. And so the last one is, what does success mean to you? And you might have just answered that with your last answer, but if you want to expand on it, you could go for it.
Yeah. Um, I think the yeah, just kind of what I was saying. I think is pretty spot on. But success too is um, not the end, right, not the end results really, but that you've done that process. You've done everything you can to to hopefully get the outcomes you want to achieve, and usually it works out better than you ever hoped if you just kind of trust that process and put your energy into um, making each day, making each moment, as valuable and worthwhile as you can. Um, so I hope, yeah, I can continue to remember. That's the great thing about coaching is you think it just helps you formulate these really good philosophies and ways to approach it because you can really see how it pays off. You've got matches, you've got development. And then I think coaching really helped me kind of be grounded in a lot of other things of parts of my life, of teaching and parenting and relationships. And um, I'm hoping that those ways of operating stick with me, that I continue to just trust the process and everything I do and take joy in the journey.
For sure. Well, I had a big section of questions on influences, but I think you hit every single one. So I do have a question at the end if you just want to add anything, but maybe we'll do that right now. Is there anything you want to add, maybe on influences from high school, maybe any other teachers or coaches, or expand on any of those guys that you already talked about, and then as well as assistant coaches you had throughout your career, or maybe anybody else that you worked with that you just want to talk a little bit more about, or anything about them that they brought to the table that you really kind of latched onto or still use in your teaching, or maybe you, like you said, maybe if you do get back into coaching, something you're going to take from them and use in the future.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that kind of already touched on, but is just that team approach. How I just don't ever take that for granted, and how appreciative I've been for my wife Kelly for the last 20 years. For she's essentially, as you know, Tim, when you're coaching, your spouse is a single parent for many of those months, and
Yep.
for April and May, I mean, just really, and how she just kept things strong and positive at home and during those months, and really just trying to pay back that as much as I can, and with that team approach. I've had a great team experience with my pod mates, um, teaching. Just kind of how our school is set up. Um, we used to be in the 1C pod with Amy Childers and Mike Harp and Natalie Cardell. And three of us had been together for so many years down there. Just you spend, yeah, probably a lot more time with your close teacher friends in that you work with and coach with. um, and just really thankful for the just the camaraderie and team approach I had with that wonderful group of teachers. And now got just a wonderful dynamic in the 2B with Bill Reuter and Colvin and MJ. It's just a great dynamic up there. But fun too. We got Heidi DeBruzzi is next to me. I coached all of her daughters at some point, um, all four of them, and so just to kind of get to work with her side by side a little bit with some of our students, and you know keep some of those tennis memories alive with her. But yeah, that's something I appreciate but just about, I think, why I've been able to stick with teaching and coaching and at the same school for 20 years now is just that sort of atmosphere is natural in Hastings. The camaraderie with your fellow teachers and coaches. What Trent's done, and I think he probably kept me in coaching a lot longer than I was
Mhm.
probably planning, I think, but just I got renewed excitement when Trent took over as athletic director to, be a part of what he was building, and the coaches breakfasts in the morning and just being a part of that, and you know feeling really connected with a vision about how to how to you know bring this community along together with what I really have come to believe in the important value of sport and athletics, and yeah, I can't. It's just so many people that I'm appreciative for with that team effort, and I hope I can keep experiencing that. And yeah, at some point get back to coaching once my kids are out of the house, and um, I probably will.
Hopefully, yeah, that'd be awesome. Last two questions then for you, Mick, and we think these are maybe the most important questions. Not that your whole life wasn't important here that we talked about, but maybe these are the two most important questions here. So, if you could give parents or coaches two pieces of advice from your perspective, what do you think they would be and why?
Um, I did write these down because I didn't want to shortchange these because I think that's a really important question. One piece of advice is actually one I got from Pete Zach, who's another person I'd be amiss not to mention his influence on me as a coach and a person and a parent. He's really, was another great support, a person that um, I think helped me as a coach and just enjoy the job so much more. But I just remember him talking about dreaming big. He just kind of said, "What do you want help with? What sort of things you want to see happen?" He just got me to imagine and just kind of get my head out of the sand a little bit of just the day to day grind, and just again, I think a lot of what Trent does with the big vision, and just start thinking, once you kind of get the rote basic things down and you can do those things, all right, then let's think bigger. I think that's important for yeah, parents and coaches to remember that and have that hope, right, and not the fear. And just probably the other thing, just I think ties in a lot of what we've already talked about, just surrounding yourself with really good people, you know, good assistants. Um, I think for parents, it's kind of just a cool thing too to see over the years is when there's been groups of parents whose kids are together and they become good friends, or maybe they were good friends beforehand, how much fun they have just coming to the matches and hanging out together and having that shared experience. Um, just appreciate that aspect of it, of being able to um, enjoy the high school athletic experience with other really good people, share that experience, and find ways to make it special and memorable together.
For sure. Same question then, a little bit different though. If you could give students or student athletes or yeah, student athletes two pieces of advice from your perspective, what would they be and why?
Yeah, that's probably what you spend so much of your time giving advice to kids, but with anything you can give way too much, right? And they don't hear anything. So I think it is kind of important, how do you narrow it down to just a couple pieces of advice. Um, One is to do multiple things. Get away from just doing one sport, even if that's your love or your passion. Find different groups of people. Find different way to exercise your mind, your body. Um, it doesn't even have to be necessarily another sport, but do another activity. Um, I think there's just such value to trying to find some well-roundedness and to do a variety of different things and learn differently. It's only going to help you in the long run. And the other two, the other one is just you can never give enough gratitude. I think from for anybody, but I think particularly from a student perspective to everybody. Your teachers, your coaches, your parents, the kids you play against. You know, um, find opportunities to be grateful. You know, And it's I think one of the most valuable things you can do to, to build long lasting relationships and friendships and mentors and mentees, but also I think to really help you ground and enjoy every moment. As we know from the last year, that nothing's guaranteed. So relish and cherish and be thankful for every moment that you do get to have, um, be a part of. And even in a year like this, think about what you can still be grateful for and thankful for, and it's going to make the experience worthwhile rather than thinking about time passing and just checking your watch to see when this is going to be over, when this class is going to be over, when this month is going to be over, when this year is going to be over. Get out of that mindset and start enjoying and appreciating the moments you have. And that's just going to make, whatever's next even better.
Well said. So, Mick, that's all the questions I got for you. Anything else you would like to add? Like I already said, the mic is yours, and you could run away with it.
Well, just as practice that gratitude piece, Tim, I really appreciate you and Trent setting up this podcast. I think it's a really cool thing, and I really am humbled by the opportunity to be a part of it. Um, and thank you.
Thanks, Mick.